Sold to the Alpha King. Chapter 20. Revised. Ezra woke to birdsong softly threading the chilled dawn, each note echoing against stone no longer shuddering under siege. A pale ribbon of sunlight slid through the curtains and painted warm gold along the curve of Alara's shoulder. She slept on her side, hand curled protectively over the gentle rise of her stomach. For a long moment, Ezra simply watched her breathe. The hush enveloping the fortress felt delicate as spun glass. He feared one careless movement might shatter it. Alara's lashes fluttered open. She met his gaze, smile blooming as morning in a garden newly replanted. "You're staring," she whispered. "Making sure the night didn't steal you," he replied, brushing a kiss across her forehead. She laid her palm against his cheek, thumb smoothing the faint scar near his temple. "Daylight will convince us both. Come. There's a world to mend." They rose slowly, deliberate in small gestures. Ezra pulling on a fresh linen shirt instead of battle-scarred armor. Alara fastening her mother's opal above the moonstone he'd gifted her months ago. The stones warmed against her skin, twin reminders that past and future echoed in her pulse. Ezra offered his arm, and together they stepped into a corridor already humming with quiet industry. Servants moved past with baskets of clean bedding for the infirmary, smiling shyly before hurrying on. Lanterns now burned beeswax tapers that filled the hallway with a comforting honey scent. Each flame reminded Ezra of those lost, yet also of the countless lives saved. Outside, the courtyard bore proud testimony to hard-won peace. Splintered beams piled neatly for salvage, scorched flagstones swept clean, and bright ribbons tied to rails fluttered like banners of renewal. New seedlings peeked from soil packed into old fissures. Warriors strolled between stalls where cooks stirred oat porridge. Their bowed heads greeted Alpha and Luna with quiet reverence. Near the well, Ezra spotted a young recruit straining to hoist a crate of spent arrowheads. Bandages wrapped his forearm from wrist to elbow. Alara pressed Ezra's elbow lightly and hurried forward, kneeling beside the boy. "Easy," she murmured, easing the crate from his good arm. "Your wound needs rest." He gasped, cheeks reddening. "Luna, I didn't expect you to—" "Callan," she interrupted gently. "You fought bravely at the South Tower. Courage isn't in the weight you lift, but the heart that lifts it." She sent a discreet wave of gold light through her fingers. The crate glided onto a waiting cart. "Heal well. Your pack needs you whole." Callan's eyes shone. "I won't let you down again." "You never did." She squeezed his uninjured shoulder, then rejoined Ezra. "Celine would be proud of that kindness," a familiar voice said. They turned to see Cassian approaching, cane tapping uneven rhythm on stone. He paused beneath a tattered banner that once bore Tanya's sigil, now charred into abstract swirls. Despite weariness in his posture, quiet strength radiated from him. "You should be resting," Ezra said, clasping the older man's forearm. "I rest when hope no longer needs to be seen," Cassian answered, smiling wryly. "Look." He gestured to two children planting violet bulbs where a crater had scarred the walkway. "Yesterday they carried grief. Today they carry seedlings. You and my daughter gave them that dawn." He pulled Ezra aside, voice low. "Guard their light. Guard hers." "With my life," Ezra promised. "And after," Cassian added, eyes glistening before he turned to Alara. He lifted her hand to his chest. Celine would be proud. His gaze dipped to her belly, and terrified in all the best ways. "She would sing lullabies," Alara whispered. "Then sing them for her." Cassian pressed a kiss to Alara's knuckles, then resumed his slow circuit, blessing each laborer with a touch to the shoulder. Ezra slid an arm round Alara's waist as they walked toward the garden near the west arch. Fresh soil had been tilled, and tiny green shoots peeked between stones. Damien stood there, one arm braced but strong, hand intertwined with Seren's. They were laughing. Damien sheepish as Seren scolded him. "If you flex your shoulder again, I'll stitch your sleeve shut," she warned. "How else can I impress the realm's prettiest healer?" he countered, voice warm with adoration. Serene rolled her eyes, though color rose to her cheeks. "Bravery is impressive enough." She turned, nodding politely at Alara and Ezra. "Alpha. Luna." Ezra's gaze dropped to their joined hands. "I see battle forged more than victory." Damien's serious dignity faltered. He ducked his head. "Seren agreed to share my watch, permanently." From behind a rosebush, Lucas emerged, brushing soil from his palms. "Permanently? I expected at least a duel of teasing banter first." He mock bowed to Seren, then to Alara. "Rumor travels fast. Should we prepare Cradle before new drill schedules?" "First the renewal ceremony, Lucas," Alara laughed. "Then we count cradles." Lucas winked and jogged toward recruits attempting to raise a banner at a crooked angle. "Straighten that pole or we'll fly slanted into the future." Damien watched him go. "He'll make a formidable uncle." "He already is," Ezra said, pulling a thorn from his palm where he'd brushed the rosebush. A distant bell rang, its clear note signaling midday preparations. Elders in cobalt ceremonial cloaks emerged from archways, filing toward a raised dais erected beside the mended statue of Dawnfort's first alpha. Fresh pennants, midnight blue, stitched with silver flames, snapped in the midday breeze. Cassian and Eamon led the procession. Ezra offered Alara his arm once more. "Ready?" he thought. "With you always," she answered, her fingers lacing through his. They crossed the square. Citizens clustered, faces bright with anticipation. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, small hands waving streamers cut from leftover battle banners. Torrin stood at the dais, his staff glinting in sunlight. At his nod, the murmurs faded into awed silence. "People of Dawnfort," Torrin called, voice carrying. "We gather for renewal. Darkness sought to bind us. Light chose otherwise." He turned to Ezra. "Alpha King, step forward." Ezra mounted the steps, silver-streaked hair gleaming. His gaze swept the crowd. Warriors with hastily polished mail, healers clutching bundles of herbs, servants still dust-streaked from sweeping debris. He drew breath. "We stand where fear once rooted," he began, voice calm, yet resounding. "These stones heard every cry. Today they will remember laughter. We broke shadow by refusing to turn against each other. No single sword, no lone flame. Every heart here forged the dawn." He gestured to Alara waiting below. "This fortress did not stand on my strength alone. It stands on her flame, on your flame, reflecting in her." Ezra bowed to her, and the crowd bowed with him. Torrin beckoned Alara. Heart hammering, she ascended. As she turned, sunlight struck opal and moonstone, casting twin halos across worn stone. Every face lifted. Anticipation, curiosity, deep affection. "My family tended small hearth fires hidden in woods," she began, voice steady despite her racing pulse. "When Orith hunted us, my mother said stars are lanterns for brave souls. Yesterday you burned like those stars." She laid her hand to her belly. The square held its breath. "A new lantern grows within me, born of your courage and our love." The gasp was collective, followed by an eruption of joy so powerful the banners trembled. Tears streaked hardened cheeks, warriors raised fists, children squealed. Cassian covered his mouth, shoulders shaking. Ezra's eyes shone, pride, fierce. Seren slipped from behind the colonnade, offering Alara a lavender-scented cloth to dab tears. Lucas whooped, wrapping Damien in a one-armed hug that nearly lifted the soldier off his feet. Torrin lifted the flame-embroidered cloak and placed it over Alara's shoulders. "We name you Bringer of Dawn, Luna of the Silver Flame." His voice cracked with emotion. Wolf howls spiraled skyward, joyous, unbroken. Alara felt the sound vibrate through bone and stirring life inside her. Ezra stepped beside her, drawing back her hood so everyone could see her smile shining brighter than any torch. When cheers softened, Torin announced a feast at dusk. Builders resumed tasks, musicians struck lively notes, and citizens scattered flower petals with triumphant abandon. Ezra guided Alara down the steps into throngs of well-wishers. A curly-haired toddler toddled forward with a dandelion crown. Alara knelt, placing it atop the child's head instead. Laughter rippled. Lucas approached with a tray of honey cakes balanced precariously on one hand. "For the Luna," he announced, offering the tray. Then, stage whispering, "And for the small lantern who already commands taste buds." Alara accepted a cake, taking a bite as crumbs dusted her cloak. Sweetness burst across her tongue. "Your culinary diplomacy is noted." Ezra snagged a cake for himself before Lucas could protest taxation. They wandered through tables laden with rosemary bread, glazed carrots, and casks of elderflower wine. Citizens pressed tokens into Alara's palms. Hand-carved wooden sunbursts, woven bracelets, tiny painted stones. She accepted each with quiet gratitude. Mid-afternoon, Alara retreated beneath a pergola covered in trailing morning glory vines to rest her feet. Ezra sank beside her, passing a cup of chilled berry cordial. She sipped, exhaling contentment. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Light," she replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "As if every lantern in the sky decided to breathe inside me." He kissed her hair. Through their bond warmth flowed admiration, devotion, a flicker of playful hunger. She nudged him. "Focus, Alpha. The feast still needs its king." He chuckled, rising. "Marinette told me she saved 2 slices of apricot tart for later. Meet me on the tower balcony after sunset." "Is it a command?" she teased. "A very humble request." He brushed her cheek, then strode away to speak with a delegation from a neighboring pack who had arrived bearing cedars for replanting. Alara watched him, love swelling until her vision blurred. A gentle hand touched her shoulder. "Seren." "Come," the healer said. "Let's find shade for a while." Together they wandered to the herb garden Damon and Serene tended. Damien sat on a low wall, braced arm resting across his knees. "Showing off your sling again?" Alara asked. "Battle souvenir," he replied. "If I remove it, Seren claims I'll ruin her handiwork." His grin softened. "Thank you for making today possible." Alara pressed her hand over his good shoulder. "Courage is contagious. You taught many to stand firm." Lucas appeared, delivering a light punch to Damien's knee. "Firm enough to let Seren tie your boots now?" "Only until stitches dissolve," Seren answered, swatting Lucas with a sprig of mint. Laughter bubbled. For a moment, Alara stepped back, absorbing the tableau. A commander letting himself be teased, a healer glowing with quiet strength, a scout who hid grief behind humor. Their smiles threaded through her heart. Sun dipped low. Ezra returned, cheeks flushed from conversation and wine. "Time for that promise," he murmured. She slipped her hand in his. They climbed the tower stairs, candles flickering along each step, fragrant with cinnamon wax. At the summit, Marinette bowed, revealing a small table laid with herb-roasted pheasant, spiced nuts, fresh cream over berries, and 2 slices of apricot tart dusted with sugar. She winked and withdrew. Twilight wrapped the balcony. A hush lived here, broken only by distant chords of a lyre. Ezra produced a velvet pouch, revealing a pendant of twin flames, 1 silver, 1 gold, curved around a milk-white opal. He fastened it beside the opal and moonstone at her collar. "Past, present, forever," he said. Emotion swelled too big for words. She touched the pendant. "What if I fail as mother?" "You carried hope through war," he murmured. "You will cradle it in peace." He kissed her mouth, soft and thorough. They dined slowly, speaking of orchard plans and library shelves, of journeying to allied packs come spring. Dessert vanished too soon, leaving only sweet aftertaste. Ezra brushed a crumb from her lip with his thumb, eyes darkening. He rose, turning down the sheets on their bed. Candlelight danced across linens white as dawn. "Come share peace," he whispered. Alara stood, letting the cloak slip from her shoulders. Together they undressed. No haste, only reverence. His fingertips traced her new pendant, then her swelling belly. He lowered, pressing his lips above the curve. "Alara," he breathed, naming the child Alara had long held only in dreams. She gasped, tears spilling. "You felt it." Fingers threaded through his hair. Light and legacy. He climbed, claiming her lips. They moved to the bed, skin to skin, each touch echoing promises. Their lovemaking was unhurried, tender, gratitude given form. When wave after wave of pleasure subsided into peaceful hush, they drifted into sleep wrapped in silk and moonlight. Morning found them tangled, sunlight gilding their bodies. Outside, the plaza hummed with lingering celebration. Musicians tuning pipes, children chasing paper lanterns repurposed into kites. Ezra rose, pressed a kiss to Alara's temple and slipped to duty. Alara watched him go, heart a cup overflowing. She dressed in a simple gown, then descended to the courtyard. Apprentices were stringing cracked shields into a decorative archway for spring's first feast. Alara offered pointers, arranged them by color gradient, and laughed when a shield clanged free, nearly toppling Lucas off a ladder. The days to come would bring more repairs, maybe new threats beyond their borders, but sunlight glinted off the opal against her heart. Life grew, despite scars. Winter's whisper carried on a brisk wind weeks later, and the fortress prepared for early snow. Alara's belly blossomed. She spent afternoons in Amon's library, drafting lullabies from lyrics Ezra scribbled in secret. Cassian told stories of the Dawn Circle, voice strong again. Damien drilled recruits with renewed vigor, but each evening took Seren's hand as though it were the fortress's surest pillar. Then, under clouds thick with promise of snow, Alara's labor began. Ezra roused instantly, limbs shaking not with fear, but awe. Serene's calm voice guided them to the birthing chamber scented with sage and warm cedar. Amon etched glowing runes around the doorway. Alara wrote each contraction, gripping Ezra's hand. "I'm with you," his thought thrummed, constant as heartbeats. Between pain waves she replied, "And after this every dawn." Hours blurred until the first cry sliced the hush. Serene's eyes brimmed. Ezra staggered through the door, pulsed louder than any battle drum, and found Alara radiant, cradling a swaddled miracle. Downy hair crowned by a silver streak shimmered under candlelight. "Meet Alara," Alara whispered. Ezra knelt, tears flooding vision, fingers trembling as he touched his daughter's hand. Miniature fingers wrapped his thumb with surprising strength. "Welcome, little star," he breathed. Later, family gathered. Damien presented a carved rattle. Lucas bowed with a tiny silver anklet. Elders offered a quilt embroidered with dawn flames. Cassian pressed a medallion into Alara's palm. Serene, glowing, asked to stand godparent beside Damien. That night under winter constellations, Ezra held Alara on the high balcony with Alara nestled close. Frost kissed the railings. Lanterns glimmered along rebuilt streets. Ezra lifted his daughter. "These are lanterns for brave souls," he intoned softly. Alara placed her hand atop his. "Carry their light. One day guide us beyond even this dawn." Below, lullaby murmurs spread. Wolves sang softly where war cries once rang. Hope grew like crocuses beneath fresh snow. Ezra kissed Alara's temple. "We built this world together, and we will teach her to choose love," she whispered. They lingered until the last lantern flickered into heaven, then slipped inside, closing doors on a fortress blanketed by warm lamplight and hopeful whispers. Above Dawnfort, stars shone bright, lanterns for brave souls who chose, and would keep choosing, love. And in the cradle Alara stirred, sighing as if she too sensed the world awaited her light. Snow lingered along the fortress walls through the first stretch of winter, but its bite felt softer with Alira's cries echoing in hearth-warmed corridors. By sun middle, the drifts began to recede, leaving sparkling rivulets that trickled into vegetable beds. Ezra rose each dawn to help Lucas and several eager youngsters shovel pathways. He relished the honest ache in his muscles, work of renewal rather than war. Whenever he paused, laughter from the nursery carried on the frosty air, tugging a grin to his lips. One morning Lucas caught him staring skyward, clearly daydreaming. "Great Alpha, your shovel's freezing to the ground." Ezra blinked and chuckled, better frozen soil than frozen hearts. Lucas leaned on his spade. "Didn't figure you for a poet. Damien's already nervous that you'll start reciting verses during drills." Damien, trudging up with a wheelbarrow of soil, grunted. "If he turns drills into sonnets, the recruits won't survive." Ezra smirked. "Only 1 or 2 verses. Seren promised to stitch your mouth if you complain." Damien coughed a laugh. "Cruel healer." Across the courtyard, Seren emerged from the infirmary, her face lighting at the sight of Damien's banter. She waved a cloth-wrapped parcel overhead. "Warm scones for the workers. Come before they cool." Lucas sprinted. "Saved by food." He snatched 2 scones, passing one to Ezra, then stuffing his cheeks before Damien could protest. Ezra bit into the flaky pastry, cinnamon sugar melting on his tongue. "Marinette's work?" he asked Seren. Seren nodded. She said planting season and courting season require equal energy. Damien's cheeks reddened. "As does shoveling season," she added. "You call this courting?" Lucas teased. "I call it manual labor disguised as flirting." Ezra raised his scone like a toast. "To labor that grows love." They clinked pastries amid soft laughter. Inside the keep, Alara rocked Alara beside the hearth in Cassian's study. Shelves once dusty with neglected lore now burst with new scrolls. Maps of potential trade roads, treatises on crop rotations, lullabies waiting to be sung. Cassian stirred a pot of spiced milk, eyes bright as he recounted an obscure dawn circle tale about a mage who convinced winter to sleep early for the sake of new seedlings. Alara gurgled, waving her tiny hands at swirling motes of dust. Alara laughed, adjusting the shawl around the infant. "She thinks winter will listen." "Perhaps it will," Cassian said softly, handing Alara a warm cup. "Sometimes the small ask braver questions than the wise." Eamon stepped in, parchment tucked under his arm, ink stains across his fingers. "Ah, the ladies of Dawn and Wise Grand Alpha." He bowed exaggeratedly, causing Alara to squeal. "The final line of prophecy is penned." Alara raised a brow. "Final?" "I amended the ancient verse." Eamon slipped the parchment onto the low table. "After shadow breaks, choice lights the path, but what follows? The original ended with merely peace remains. Too hollow. So," he cleared his throat dramatically, "I added, and from that peace rise gardens of dawn where hearts may choose again." Cassian tapped the table, impressed. "Legacy sealed." Alara smiled, tracing the fresh ink. "Gardens of Dawn. Perfect." Eamon eyed the baby. "She will learn to read it before long." Alara snorted. "Perhaps let her master holding her head up first." Elira responded by squealing and attempting to pull a strand of Alara's hair. That evening the dining hall bustled with a small harvest celebration. Winter greens, last of the root crop roasted with rosemary, sweet cider spiced with cloves, benches filled with wolves in wool tunics instead of armor. Ezra sat at the head table with Alara. Elira nestled in a cradle crafted by Damien's own careful hands. Lucas clambered onto a bench, tankard raised. A toast to the pup who sleeps through drills better than half my recruits. Laughter roared. Ezra shook his head, while Alara shot Lucas a mock glare. Serene stood, cheeks pink. A toast to Lucas, who teaches recruits that laughter is a shield as strong as any sword, though his dancing still needs work. Cheers and whistles erupted. Lucas sat, theatrically wounded. Ezra rose, tankard in hand. The hall hushed. A toast to every soul in Dawnfort. You chose peace when war demanded fear. He turned to Alara and Elira, and to the light who will remind us why we must choose it again tomorrow. Everyone drank, some wiping eyes. After supper, musicians strummed lute and reed pipe. Cassian stepped carefully with Eldris Mira in a slow circle, laughing when he misstepped. Lucas whisked Seren into a spirited jig until Damien cut in, spinning her with surprising grace. Ezra carried Elira along the wall, rocking gently. She watched the swirl of skirts in lamplight, silver flecks bright in her dark hair. Alara slipped her arms around Ezra from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. She is mesmerized. So am I, he whispered, eyes soft on the dancers. Moonlight spilled across stone floors by the time revelers drifted to beds. Ezra and Alara returned to their chamber, Elira sleeping heavy. They set the cradle near the hearth where embers glowed. Ezra poured warm water in the basin, washed Alara's hands, then his own. Quiet ritual becoming nightly vow. The war's ash gone from their skin and souls. Cold weeks passed, but spirits remained warm. Apprentices under Aemon polished wardstones to gentle humming, sealing out winter's deepest bite. Children raced sleds down the east slope. Recruits scrambled to keep up, weaving training into games. One crisp afternoon, Ezra hefted a sack of apple saplings across the courtyard, nearly colliding with Lucas guiding two timid travelers, first refugees to arrive seeking safety since the battle. The couple held a toddler half hidden in a cloak. At sight of the alpha, their fear flickered. "Welcome," Ezra greeted, setting down the saplings. "You are safe in Dawnfort." The father swallowed. "We heard rumors light drove darkness. Light chose hope." Ezra corrected softly. "Stay as long as you need. Longer if you wish." He sent Lucas to arrange quarters and supplies, then hoisted the saplings again. Later, Ezra relayed the meeting to Alara while she swayed with Elira near the nursery window. "Word travels beyond borders," he said. Alara pressed her cheek to Elira's crown. "Then Dawnfort becomes beacon." She laid the baby in the crib, pendant she'd hung above twinkling in lamplight, and faced Ezra. "Speak the lullaby verse you wrote," she urged. He cleared his throat, voice hushed. "Sleep, little flame, where the orchard trees bend. Dream of the dawn our hearts will defend. Here in the hush where the silver wolf lies. Peace guards your breath, love lights your skies." Elira cooed as if claiming the promise. Alara's eyes brimmed, and she pulled Ezra into a gentle kiss. Spring edge crept near, crocus tips pushing through snow among rubble now piled neatly outside the gate for repurposing. Ezra called council to discuss trade caravans from the coast. Damien presented patrol routes. Lucas offered courier hawk schedules. Aemon recommended diplomatic envoys sharing ward knowledge. Alara sat beside Ezra, Elira gurgling in a sling across her chest, and spoke about welcoming displaced families. An elder expressed worry. Resources still scarce. Alara met his gaze. "Sharing our harvest teaches others to grow their own dawn." The elder fell silent, chastened, then nodded. When council ended, Ezra clasped Alara's hand. Through their link he sent admiration. She squeezed back, murmuring aloud, "We lead together." He brushed a kiss to her knuckles in affirmation. That afternoon they joined Cassian in the orchard, guiding saplings into prepared holes. Damien hammered stakes while Seren checked soil pH. She had devoured Aemon's botany scrolls in sleepless nights. Lucas supervised two adolescent wolves who argued about root depth. Ezra straightened, brushing dirt off his knees, and observed Alara gently tamping soil around a young tree. Her cheeks glowed, strands of hair loosened in spring breeze. Elira dozed in a basket at her feet, sun gilding her soft hair. Ezra's heart pressed so full it almost hurt. He crossed, nudged her shoulder. A moment. She stood, wiping hands on her smock. He guided her to the orchard edge, overlooking rolling hills beyond the walls. Snow glistened in distant shadows, but here grass peaked green. A hawk circled overhead, shrilling like trumpeted hope. Ezra inhaled crisp air tinged with earth. When I walked these fields months ago, I saw ruins. Now I see beginnings. He turned to her. Alara, every dawn since I met you, you have shown me another horizon. Her eyes shone, moist and bright. She cupped his cheek, thumb painting circles. And you taught me that horizons are promises worth chasing. She tilted her forehead to his. Silence, warm and vibrant, enveloped them. In that hush, their bond thrummed. Love, peace, a promise unfolding like bud to blossom. Evening drew near. Torchlighters ignited lanterns along parapets, their flames steady in calming wind. Families gathered around the central hearth for First Thaw Story Circle. Eamon held a new scroll, fresh verses about Elira's birth. Children scrambled for cushions. Elders fetched mugs of steaming chocolate sweetened with honey. Alara settled on a bench, Elira in her arms, Ezra at her side. Lucas perched cross-legged near the fire, playing a lilting tune on a reed pipe. Damien stood at the back, hands on Serene's shoulders, relaxed for once, expression soft. Eamon began. When winter clutched the hill, a dawn flame warmed its chill. From silver wolf and gentle star, light was born to spread afar. His voice wound tales around flickering firelight. Children gasped, eyes huge. Adults dabbed tears. Alara's head rested on Ezra's shoulder. Through their link she heard his awe at each word, and the surety that they would guide Elira to write her own verses one day. Later, as fire died to coals, Lucas announced with theatrical gravitas, "Who will join me tomorrow at dawn for the first orchard watering? I require brave spirits who like cold feet and early songs." Groans mingled with laughter. Damien retorted, "I'll join if you carry the buckets yourself." Serene added sweetly, "I'll join if Lucas doesn't sing." Children giggled. Lucas placed hand to chest in mock injury. Ezra rose, lifting Elira's basket. "We will be there. I might sing softly." Lucas bowed. "Then buckets for all." He swung away, whistling. On their way back to chambers, Alara whispered, "Thank you for promising to sing." Ezra shrugged, smiling. Someone must keep Lucas humble. They entered the nursery. Moonlight spilled through slits, washing the cradle in silver. Alara laid Elira down. The infant stirred, blinking moss-green eyes drowsily, then drifting back to sleep with a contented sigh. Asena's presence brushed Alara's mind, satisfied. Ezra reached out, pushing a wisp of hair behind Alara's ear. "Rest," he murmured. She stepped into his embrace. "One moment more." They stood, arms wrapped around each other, watching their child breathe and listening to the quiet heartbeat of a fortress reborn. Their bond hummed, simple, eternal. A lantern outside flickered in the breeze, its light dancing across stone, casting twin shadows, Alpha and Luna, against wall and window. Shadows intertwined, one flame instead of two. And outside those walls the crocuses pushed, orchards rooted, and winter, convinced by a child's innocence, began its gentle retreat. Spring unfolded in sudden bursts of color, as if the fortress itself had taken a deep breath and exhaled petals. Budding lilacs perfumed every breeze, and the orchard Ezra and Alara planted shimmered with young leaves the color of fresh jade. Elira, now 3 months old, discovered her own voice. Each morning she greeted the sun with delighted chirps that echoed down corridors and coaxed even the most stoic sentries into startled grins. On the first truly warm afternoon, Alara and Serene spread a blanket beneath blossoming apple branches. Elira lay between them, waving her arms with fierce determination. Serene dangled a ribbon of bright silk above the baby's face, laughing when small fists batted at it. "She'll be sparring with Lucas before she can walk," Serene predicted. Ezra and Damien approached, balancing buckets sloshing with water for the saplings. "Lucas will insist it's proper training," Damien said, setting his load down. "He's already designing miniature wooden sword." Alara brushed her thumb over Alira's cheek. Then Seren will be there to mend the bruises. I have an endless supply of salve, Seren promised. Their eyes met, and Damien's expression softened into something so tender, even Ezra refrained from teasing. Ezra crouched to press a kiss to Alira's tiny fist. Up for orchard rounds, little flame? She responded with a gurgle. He straightened, rolling his shoulder. One more row of trees watered before the council meets. Alara rose, dusting grass from her gown. I'll join you. Fresh air is good for her. Damien stayed behind to show Seren how to adjust the support straps on a sapling that leaned. Ezra smiled as he watched them, she guiding his large hands, he lowering his head to catch her murmured instructions. Love had lain dormant in the fortress for years. Now it sprouted everywhere. Watering complete, Alara slipped Alira into a sling across her chest and joined Ezra in the council chamber. The meeting room, once stark and solemn, now bore bright tapestries woven by local artisans. Lucas sprawled at one end of the table, rolling a map into a tube. Trade agreement with the coastal packs is secure, he announced. Caravans will bring sea fish and citrus within the fortnight. An elder named Brena adjusted her spectacles. And we share our crops and metalwork in exchange? Lucas nodded, plus a promise that no walls rise between us again. Ezra rested his palms on the table. Then Dawnfort truly becomes a beacon, not just a stronghold. He looked to Alara. Next order? Education, she said. We will convert the South Storehouse into a school. Warriors who choose early retirement can teach history and survival to pups. Eamon leaned forward, hands ink-smudged. I've begun writing primers on wardcraft. He produced a slim booklet. Illustrated, so even the littlest can learn sigil shapes. Cassian smiled. Then our children will guard peace with knowledge, not fear. A murmur of agreement circled the table. Lucas popped upright. Speaking of children, tomorrow is the naming feast. Decorations? Already in place, Damien replied, surprising everyone. He produced folded swatches of pale pink and dusk blue fabric. Seren and I sewed banners. Lucas clutched his chest theatrically. You sew? Straight lines. Damien smirked. Mostly. Remarkably straight, Seren corrected, entering with a basket of wildflowers. She presented them to Alara. For Elira's cradle during the ceremony. Alara accepted the blooms. Thank you. She'll love the scent. When the council adjourned, Brena lingered. Luna, she said hesitantly. I crafted something for your daughter. She lifted a tiny bracelet strung with milky beads and a single silver charm resembling a dawn flame. My hands aren't steady, but I hope. It's perfect, Alara breathed, fastening the bracelet around Elira's wrist. The infant flexed her fingers, fascinated by the glinting charm. Night settled warm and fragrant. Ezra found Alara on the balcony, lullaby book in her lap, Elira dozing against her shoulder, stars scattered like spilled diamonds across velvet sky. He draped a shawl over her shoulders and stood behind, arms encircling her and the baby. Tomorrow's feast feels almost unreal, he said softly. Happiness can feel that way after so much darkness, she answered. But it's real. She is proof. She kissed Elira's hair. They lingered until moonlight silvered every blossoming branch, then retired. In their chamber, Alara laid Elira in her crib. Ezra removed his boots, stretching aching feet. Will you practice your blessings for tomorrow? Alara teased. He groaned. Eamon insists I recite 5 stanzas. I may forget lines. That's why I wrote them on the inside of your cuff. She grinned, holding up his ceremonial tunic. He laughed, sweeping her into his arms. What would I do without you, bringer of dawn? Speak shorter speeches, she guessed, laughter bubbling. He set her down gently, brushing his lips along her jaw. Candlelight fluttered, their bond warmed, quiet and sure. Tonight their lovemaking was quick and joyous, laughter muffled into kisses so as not to wake Elira. After, They lay tangled in sheets, hearts drumming contented lullabies against each other's skin. The next morning, the great hall transformed. Sunlight poured through stained glass panes, splashing colored pools over trestle tables draped in Damien and Serene's banners. Lucas and 3 teens strung garlands of cherry blossoms between rafters, occasionally pelting each other with petals until Serene's stern look curbed mischief. Eamon adjusted braziers so gentle smoke carried lavender and sandalwood. Cassian stood at the hearth, reciting lines under his breath. He would present the Dawn Circle medallion formally today. Guests arrived from neighboring packs, dignitaries, farmers, traders, bearing gifts, carved wooden toys, jars of mountain honey, spools of silk. Ezra greeted each with firm handshake, Alara with warm smiles. Mid-afternoon, Torin tapped his staff. The crowd settled, benches creaking. Alara stepped onto the dais, Elira in her arms. The infant wore a gown of cream linen edged with pale gold thread, the tiny bracelet Bryna made glimmering on her wrist. Ezra joined them holding a slender branch of blossoming apple, symbol of new life. He laid it across Alara's forearms. In bloom, even against frost, he proclaimed, voice ringing clear. Eamon advanced, reading from his parchment. We gather to bless Elira Selene, Bloodwolf, firstborn of the Alpha King and Luna. He gestured to elders who approached, laying small tokens in a polished wooden bowl. Salt for purity, grain for abundance, a flame-carved stone for courage. Damien and Seren stepped forward next. Seren carried a lace handkerchief embroidered with dawn flames. Damien held the cedar rattle. Seren spoke first, cheeks pink. As godparents, we pledge wisdom and unwavering guardianship. Damien cleared his throat. And embarrassing stories when she's older. Laughter rippled. He winked at Elira, shaking the rattle. The baby blinked, then giggled, the sound bubbling like chimes. Lucas followed, presenting a miniature wooden practice sword. When she's ready. He bowed elaborately, nearly toppling onto an elder's foot. Cassian came last, medallion shining. He fastened it to a ribbon and placed it around Elira's neck. May light guide your steps, granddaughter. Alara's eyes brimmed. She raised Elira so all could see. Here is our dawn flame. Guard her, teach her, learn from her. The hall erupted in cheers, wolf howls harmonizing in joyous cacophony. Ezra kissed Alara, then Elira's tiny brow. Feasting commenced. Platters of roasted lamb with rosemary, braids of cheese bread, bowls of candied nuts, pitchers of sweet berry cordial. Marinette outdid herself. Musicians struck lively reels. Lucas hauled Damien to dance. Saren clapped a rhythm, laughter spilling bright. Cassian told stories at a children's table. Eamon debated runes with visiting scholars. In a quiet corner, Alara nursed Elira, humming the lullaby. Ezra sat beside them, watching mother and daughter with awe. She listens, he whispered, eyes shining. She is her father's student, Alara returned. Twilight blended into sapphire dusk. Lanterns strung across courtyards flared to life, each flame a promise. Ezra carried Elira outside, Alara at his side. The pack gathered for the lantern walk, every soul clutching a paper lantern inscribed with a hope or remembrance. Torin began by lighting his lantern inscribed with the name of a friend lost in the first siege. One by one, lanterns glowed to life. Ezra's bore the single-word choice. Alara's read unity. Damien's lantern sported a shaky heart drawn by Seren's youngest apprentice, prompting Damien's soft chuckle. Lucas proudly displayed an illustrated sword and spoon, earning head shakes all around. Seren's lantern read healing, Eamon's knowledge, Cassian's legacy, and little Elira's lantern, carried by Ezra, simply bore a handprint pressed in safe dye. At Ezra's nod, lanterns lifted into the sky, first gently, then in a shimmering tide of light rising above Dawnfort's towers. The crowd gasped, watching hopes ascend like newborn stars. Alara leaned into Ezra, tears bright on her cheeks. Remember the night we first dreamed of this, she whispered. Every day, he answered. They stood until lanterns became indistinguishable from constellations. Wind carried faint strains of a song, children singing Amon's new verse. Elders joined soft harmony, warriors hummed. The melody circled walls, drifted into orchard, out over hills. Later, when quiet blanketed the fortress, Ezra and Alara returned to their chamber. They laid Elira in her cradle, the baby's eyes half open, as if memorizing moonlight patterning the ceiling. Ezra brushed a knuckle over her cheek. "Sleep, little flame," he murmured, quoting his lullaby verse. He and Alara crawled into bed, exhaustion settling gentle as a feather. Through their link, they replayed scenes of the day, Elira's giggle, lanterns rising, Lucas's antics, Cassian's pride. Alara turned to Ezra. "We did it," she said, wonder lacing her voice. "We'll keep doing it," he replied, "tomorrow and every dawn." Outside, frost barely clung to leaves. Spring would sweep it away by sunrise. Inside, the cradle glowed softly where a moonbeam struck Elira's silver streak. The baby sighed, tiny fingers curling around invisible threads of dream. Ezra pulled Alara into his arms. They listened to the hush, the steady heartbeat of their child, distant owl calls, wind ruffling banners that now bore only symbols of hope. He kissed her hair. "Lanterns for brave souls," he whispered. Alara smiled against his chest. "And 2 brave souls to keep those lanterns lit." They drifted into sleep, hearts entwined. Above Dawnfort, stars mirrored the lantern's glow, eternal sentinels watching over a world rebuilt on love, choice, and unity.